We have Dr. Andre to give us a talk on the role of the Horn of Africa and what kind of role the Horn could play in the global, geopolitical, multipolar world disorder or order. Dr. Andre is the head of the Middle East African program at the Polish Institute of International Affairs and a Sub-Saharan African analyst. He researches new political actors in Africa, emerging powers, political discourses, soft power, and information flow. He has collaborated with think tanks, Royal United Services Institute, international organizations such as EU, Council of Europe, media organizations such as Al Jazeera and The Guardian. He also consults government on African issues and teaches fake news, post-truths, and the politics of information at the Collegium Civitas Warsaw. Currently, he is working on a book on the political power of new religious movement in Africa. And he is active on Twitter, Facebook, maybe, I don't know. Now he's also collaborating with Faisal. Welcome, Dr. Yandri. And you may have the floor.
Thank you for the invitation. Very happy to see students or other listeners coming from different backgrounds. I wish I had similar sessions when I was a student, and I have already seen in your room that some of my colleagues were previously here in the same place, like Dr. Istvan Tarosi from Hungary, who is a good friend of mine. The title of this presentation is about the European perspective, but I mean my research approach is to look into local perspectives. So I will of African development. So I will try to mix a bit of everything, a bit of looking into the Horn from different angles, from different actors, from different perspectives, and to decipher what actually are the perceptions of the Horn itself and perceptions of its potential or roles. It's something between academic. It's not really an academic center. It's a research center, but not an academic center. It's part of the administration, but it's not really run by the government or by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. What we do is both writing, analysis, and research materials which are available for the broader public. But we also do that for our foreign policy makers, for the MFA, for the Office of President, and for other institutions which are practitioners and guys who are implementing things. So whatever ideas we come up with, we give it to them, and if they use it or not, that's other part of the story. Our role ends with research, the best quality we can provide, and we are, as for 5 or 6 years that I worked there, I was never limited in my freedom of research and of providing recommendations. I was never told what to write and what not to write. So in terms of intellectual freedom, it is a fully independent institution. Okay, so getting to the topic. What role for the Horn in the changing global setting? As we all experience, it's a turbulent time, and there is a sense, at least in Europe, I'm sure here as well, there is a sense that we are undergoing a major recalibration or changes in the global setting, and we don't really know. We're not sure what will emerge out of it. In recent years, there was quite a surprising global rise in popularity in a version of analysis of international relations based on geography. The books which point to secret keys to understanding everything hidden in the composition of valleys, mountain ranges, etc., are instant hits in European markets. Like books like Tim Marshall's Prisoners of Geography, 10 maps that will tell you everything we need to know about global politics. In analytical community, we generally don't like this trend. We dislike it because it's for its reductionism. It claims that the future is already determined, which is not, and it only looks into one dimension, space. And the space is the one dimension that lost its meaning in the age of information. I mean, it's not really that important if from Warsaw to Brussels, if it's 2,000 or 2,200 kilometers, the more important thing is how much you can communicate and how quick the ideas and the information flow. There is this. But if you were to identify one location in the world that is actually you could really say it is defined by the geographical position, that would probably be the Horn of Africa. That for most of the cases, this analysis based on geography is too reductionist. But for Horn of Africa, it kind of works. Well, of course, it's one of along one of the most vital maritime routes through the Aden Sea and the Red Sea that are here, and of course the Nile starts here, and of course Egypt has no choice but to accept it. But again, if there is something that we have in common in Poland and in Ethiopia, and why they are Horn, is that we love our exceptionalism, and we love to see ourselves as regional center of gravity, if not the center of the world. In Poland, we love to see ourselves that way. In Sudan, which I've focused on for many years, throughout the decades, you have different versions of ideas that the country is poised for greatness. It's in the 70s, it was the idea of the breadbasket for the Middle East. In the 2000s, it was seeing control over the water as a notion of a civilizational project. In Ethiopia, you also hear that in many kinds of discourses that, for example, the country is poised for greatness by 2030. In the religious discourse, you hear that. In Poland, we are absolutely sure that we are the natural leader of our region, and books that suggest that Poland will become an empire in 100 years always sell very well in bookstores. So those are examples. Those are great examples but you may look at those ideas as maybe too not too realistic. But on the other hand, those are examples of optimism that fits the vigor to reinvent ourselves, and it's good to dream big. It's good to have a horizon that you are targeting, that you're going, that you know the direction that you should be going. So as for the Horn, we tend to for granted the notion of the word called strategic. I mean, any kind you read about the Horn, you can read strategically located and strategically important Horn of Africa. So you might have expected that if something is very strategic, it should translate into constant attention of the major players, that into readjusting the agendas, into long-term thinking, planning. But if we look at the level of engagement by major global powers, I would kind of doubt it. Let's start with a general comment that the Horn of Africa is certainly important, but is it as important as we think for major players? The history of the Cold War, changing alliances between the USA and the Soviet Union, in Ethiopia, in Somalia, and Sudan, it's now a distant past. After the end of the Cold War, until around 2010, Africa, including the Horn of Africa, lies pretty much on the sidelines of the world system. The black holes, like Afghanistan or Somalia, persisted. Those were places in which none of the big wigs were really interested, and were left like that. American and European capital largely withdrew from the region in the consequence of the global financial crisis in 2008, leaving space for Chinese capital to gain dominance. There were, of course, exceptional areas that, for example, the threat posed by the jihadist group, such as Al-Shabaab or the Somali branch of the Islamic State, those are which refocus global attention to the Horn, and that really makes it really strategic. Shabab is the strongest branch of Al Qaeda in the world, and the recent attack of Bilal al-Sudani, the head of the important figure in the Islamic State Somalia branch, showed that actually this little visible branch of IS was crucial in financing and in organizational terms for the entire global jihadist network. So it was here from the Horn of Africa that actually operations from Mozambique to Syria and Iraq were planned and organized. The second area of such global importance is the piracy of the coast of Somalia and now turning to Yemen. The world has woken up to the fact that the safety of navigation across the Red Sea requires continued commitment, and the most impossible informal coalition was formed on this issue, ranging from US to China and Iran, pretty much on the same page to fight piracy in the Horn. And this is one of the reasons why you have so many military bases, for example, in Djibouti. It also involved navies of the EU countries. The Operation Atalanta it was the first offensive mission of the EU forces that you can find in the globe. More foreign military bases, of course, are being opened, and their importance was well, seen during the evacuation of foreigners from embassy staffs from Sudan at the beginning of the war in Sudan earlier this year. For me, the extremely interesting example of centrality and importance of the Horn is the experience of Turkish entry into Somalia, 2011. That Turkey made this spectacular entry into the country, which was really a game changer. Around that time, even UN agencies didn't really work on the ground in Somalia. They preferred to stay in their offices in Nairobi and just to have a look to work remotely. For everyone, it was considered a no-go zone. While the Turks arrived all of a sudden with thousands of engineers, doctors, builders, teachers, and treating this supposedly worst place on earth as a land of opportunities. So the very fact that the place is so unwanted by others all of a sudden became an asset, became a reason for which it was such highly valued by the Turks. I have many conversations with first Turkish ambassador to Somalia, and the sense it really worked together with the ideas developed by Davutoglu, the former academic, then foreign minister of Turkey, who had this idea that extending cooperation in development area is also a very important tool of building position of Turkey itself. It's not only the hard power that matters, but also the soft one is a means of building position. So this forced everyone else to change rules of engagements and to take a different approach. The US was pretty much forced to open its own embassy after Turkey did so. And recently, even Turkey presented plans to build a station for its space program in Somalia. The aim was to launch a rocket to the moon for the 100th anniversary of the Turkish Republic. It's this year, 2023, that we had this 100th anniversary. I haven't heard of the rocket flying from Somalia to the moon, but maybe we still have some weeks to go. Maybe that happens. But of course, this idea was and this location is also about geography because the proximity to the equator helps launching rockets to overcome gravity. However, if we look, for example, at the American policy, I wouldn't really say that it proves the special importance of the Horn in the global puzzle. When we come back to the 90s, when for example, when Ethiopia was under Meles Zenawi rule, the country was considered as the most important ally in the region for the US, and the kind of the one that would support the American positions in the region. And it is not by accident that Ethiopia, along with Kenya, was selected for a visit by Barack Obama. Not only because it was it was considered to be an example of a successful development, but also for the strategic reasons. Despite all the problems and that all the tensions that led to the then regime to its downfall a few years later. The face of American involvement at that time was its ambassador to the UN, Samantha Power, a high caliber politician and author of a very influential book, A Problem from Hell, which was an apology, which was an apologetic book for the idea of humanitarian intervention. And as you know better than me, she spent most of her career in the Horn of Africa. However, then in the Trump area, the administration has largely given up on leading policies in the Horn of Africa, and effectively giving carte blanche to its friends in the region, such as United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, or Israel. The little exemptions from this rule were that in the last week of the Trump rule, Trump got personally involved in the issue of removing Sudan from the list of countries sponsoring terrorism, and that he got involved in the talks between Egypt and Ethiopia, but that never succeeded because his position was very much favorable to Egypt and not acceptable to Ethiopia. But he kind of woken up in the last year of his term that actually personal involvement in the Horn is something that is important. Since the establishment of the position of the Special Envoy for the Horn of Africa, the US Special Envoy for the Horn of Africa in 2021, the re-establishment of the position, it was changed 3 times over the course of 1 year. The first, Jeffrey Feltman, when you read his comments today, when you read his writing and his comments, he's very critical about his own policies of when he was at the post. The second envoy who replaced him only stayed for 3 months, and that caused confusion and the sense of disrespect in the Horn countries. And the current one, Mike Hammer, previously had no experience with Africa or the region, and he took over the Horn portfolio on the wave of his popularity when he was a successful ambassador to the DRC, to the Congo, in the hope that fresh, unbiased perspective would allow for a surprise success in the region. But that really points to the problem of understaffing of for example, American embassies in the region, which affects ability to formulate strong policies and to really think strategically. For example, in Sudan, a place so sensitive and delicate, at the time when the crisis was reaching its breaking point and the war was going to break out, the overrepresentation of young, inexperienced diplomats was one of the main reasons why there was no one was able to formulate a quick, strong diplomatic action that could calm things down, as they successfully did in 2011 or 2012 between South Sudan and South Sudan. And if we'll, for example, look into Darfur, which is pretty much facing a repeated story from 20 years ago now, targeted killings of the entire ethnic groups. The Bush administration responded to the same crisis 15 years ago with a robust sanctions, high-level diplomacy led by a special envoy and by personal involvement of presidents. The current administration has done nothing of that in relation to Sudan and Darfur. So taking all of that into account, it's difficult to uphold the notion that actually the major players such as US continuously and consider Horn policies in the Horn in strategic terms. The European Union, of course, it had its Commission President Ursula von der Leyen arriving into Ethiopia in December 2019 on her first foreign trip following assuming office, and that signaled a certain importance. But from the European perspective, stable Horn is being seen as a safety net that would not allow a major disaster to occur, and this is the main perspective, the main lens. The major crisis that would push millions of people out. That's the perspective that the European policymakers have, and that ingredients for this disaster include climate change that could make sustaining livelihoods of fast-growing societies even more difficult or close to impossible, especially if reinforced by political turbulences and further escalation of intercommunal tensions and further growth of Islamic terrorism. Let me quote Harun Maruf, the long-time head of Somali section of Voice of Africa, who in his great book on Al-Shabaab, he pretty much constated that extremism became endemic to Somalia and the Horn, and it will stay here for decades, no matter how much we try to beat it. So it's a kind of unbeatable enemy that will always be here, and if it rises too much, we could get closer to this perspective of a major catastrophe that Europe is so much afraid of, and this kind of on the European side there is this sense of high priorities, but I would say the stakes are growing when probability of the worst case scenario grows. If it's kind of okay, the stakes from the European perspectives also are not that high. This will, of course, continue to translate into seeing support for economic development and climate change mitigation as the safety nets against this worst case scenario. And that will continue to be a European priority and European perspective. Russia, I have seen that tomorrow there is a lecture on NATO after Crimea. Russia is increasingly present in the Horn, and the narratives that it brings often resonate with local grievances. That's understandable. The BRICS, although it is weak institutionally, becomes to be seen as another incarnation of the coalition of states of the Global South, as an embodiment of the promise of a world that is not Western dominated. Not accidentally, the list of the countries which will be joining BRICS soon, or the ones that are willing to do so, is almost the same as the old G24 group in the International Monetary Fund, the group of the countries of the Global South which came together to lobby for its own perspective in the international financial system. That was not that successful, and we have another attempt to rally together for the same goals. However, there is this big disparity in understanding what multipolarity, this key promise that makes BRICS attractive, really means. In Africa in general, and in Horn of Africa specifically, as we are discussing this case, it is understood as being the future multipolar world is understood as the one that uplifts the region in the global structure and puts it as an independent pole of power. But it looks very differently if you look at the internal Russian expert debate. Over there, the dominating notion is that the current unipolarity will be replaced by bipolarity, and Africa's role is to support the Russian pole, not to represent a pole on its own. So to decipher Russia's positions or roles foreseen for the Horn is very much, those roles are very much instrumentalized and subject to Russia's own goals, and not necessarily development oriented. China has appointed its own envoy to the Horn recently, the experienced diplomat Xue Bing, who announced to be attempting to undertake some own peace initiatives. However, the peace conference that was organized in June 2022 didn't really even attempt to address any of the major ongoing conflicts in the Horn of that time, be it Ethiopia's Tigray or Somalia. Therefore, it is difficult really to treat it as a manifestation of influence in mediation, but rather a photo opportunity. Similarly, China that got credited for reconciliation between Iran and Saudi Arabia. China jumped on the already ongoing process and got credited for that, but it was not really an initiator of the process. So therefore, it is difficult to see continuity in Chinese idea of the region as being strategically important. The Belt and Road and the massive Chinese engagement that you have witnessed around 2010, around 10 years ago, went down in recent years. The Chinese internal debates also changed, and China is more oriented towards its own internal market than towards global markets. So it is not certain whether China will return with comparable energy that it showed 10 years ago. To sum up and to put it all together, when we say that the Horn has a strategic meaning in the broader region and international system, it is good to reevaluate different perspectives to see how much content is supporting this notion. And no matter the fact that on daily basis it is sometimes less a priority than declared, it is essential for the Horn of Africa to reinvent itself, taking positive aspects of cultural ties to build a stabilizing, inclusive, development-friendly position. Having a goal on the horizon is always better than navigating without it, even if this goal is overstated or seems too optimistic. It's easier to say what we don't like than what we are for when we are formulating this common position. I remember very well from my visit in South Sudan during the independence referendum in 2011, the massive support for the vote for separation was a no vote. It was not a yes vote. It was a vote against something that we don't like, against a painful past, but it was not a vote for a positive state-building project, which was not there in the public, imagination, and that proved to be lacking very much later on. To come back to the European perspective, the experience of Yugoslavia, which only became strong international player when it put its internal differences and animosities aside. It was only successful when it was able to work together as a larger grouping. I have seen there is a street of Marshal Tito in Addis. Going when this notion of a common goals and common destiny is evaporating, then Yugoslavia as an important player also lost its own meaning. So as for the Horn, when you have competing tendencies, the ones that are highlighting differences, local or intercommunal differences, but also you have. I remember very well my meetings with editor-in-chief of Sudan Tribune, the I would say the best newspaper news outlet in Sudan, who resided in Paris for many years. And when I asked him about identity, I mean, how does he feel? Does he feel Sudanese? Does he feel African? Does he feel his tribal, is the tribal affiliation the most important one for him, an Arab one, or which one? He said, first of all, I feel myself, and I think of myself as the man of the horn, not as a Sudanese, not as an Arab, not relating to my tribe. I feel a man of the horn because wherever I go, is it Ethiopia, is it Eritrea, is it Djibouti or Somalia, I am undistinguishable. I feel familiar with the sounds, with the smells, with the culture, with music, and this, even if countries internally undergo disintegrating processes, it can still think about this broader regional identity of the Horn that can still keep it as an influential and potentially big independent center in the global system. So I mean that will be it from what I prepared. I'm very happy to open floor for discussion and comments. You are all welcome.
Yes, you critique geography, but for the Horn, geography is still relevant, as you said. But you didn't use only geography, but you use different analysts of Ministry of Foreign Affairs or diplomats, idiosyncratic values, leaders, idiosyncratic values, major states, emerging states, especially the role of Turkey, vis-a-vis the role of the superpowers, the role of terrorism or the global war on terror in the place of the Horn, coming of China. It's a very, very rich discussion how the Horn has been evolving within the broader multipolar world order and what would be. And a very good invitation for the Horn citizens here is to reimagine yourself as a Horn citizen. That could be a goal on the horizon, just to quote him.